Sounds good.
Welcome back to Next Step U. I think this is episode 6, correct? Summer 6?
Something like that.
I think it is. We've been gone for a little bit again, a little break. 2 trips later, we went to San Diego for both of our 22nd birthdays for a week. Then we were in Florida, in Orlando with her family. So we just got back from that, yesterday or 2 days ago. So finally, we're able to get another podcast out. And now we should be staying in Minnesota for a good couple months before we move, but that can change daily. So today we have on with us the Gophers defensive end, Boye Mafe. We brought him on to talk about his drive, how he got to where he is today. And obviously you don't get to playing football at a D1 level without a good work ethic and without a good mindset. We met way back when, 7th or 8th grade, I think.
Yeah, I think that's when we started playing AAU together.
Yeah, we played AAU basketball together, probably 7th or 8th grade, and we became good friends after that. And it's just been kind of cool to watch your journey, because I remember when you were getting texts from coaches in 8th grade, and you're like, yeah, not basketball is not my thing. I don't even think you played high school basketball, did you? You're just playing travel basketball for fun.
Yeah, it was more of a. I was on the team for high school, but I wasn't necessarily the greatest, But I definitely, I definitely remember that I had way more fun playing traveling. I mean, that was especially in relationships like me and you, and that's how I met people. And I just felt like it was more fun playing in the summer.
Absolutely. So you're from Hopkins, correct? That's where you went to high school. Yeah. Take us through just your journey, where you came from, how you've been brought up, and where you're at today, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So for me, grew up in Golden Valley, all my whole life. Went to Hopkins High School, was in the school district my whole life, and for me, I really resonated with sports because I made a lot of close friends through sports, and I think the biggest thing that resonated with me was that my biggest thing is I just loved the atmosphere of playing team sports. I never played tennis or golf, that is sports by yourself. I was more into the team atmosphere. And then having a family like I do, I have a lot of siblings who play sports. My brother played football, my sister played rugby, my other sister ran track at Hampton, my sister played rugby at Michigan State and played for the USA team, and then my brother played football at Mankato. So just having that around me all the time, it was kind of something where I was like, this is something I wanted to do as a rite of passage, but it was just something that everyone in my family did. And so I've always been around sports, and not necessarily my parents' favorite thing. They always thought books was the way to go with everything, but for me, I just fell in love with sports. And so for me, actually getting up to the stage of playing in college was actually a very unique path. For me, I necessarily wasn't all dived in football until I would say about end of my sophomore year, junior year. That's when it really clicked for me. Playing basketball was fun, and I actually got my first college letter was from Albany, New York, for basketball. After playing in a tournament, they saw me and they sent me a letter. I don't know if they sent it to 3,000 people, but that was one of the first realizations that I might be able to do something in college. And so for a while, I actually thought basketball was my path, and I thought that was where I was going to head. But it ended up, today I'm playing football now, but I ended up realizing that actually football was my path. And one thing I do realize and recognize is that it takes time with everything. Everyone realizes that you're not an overnight success. That never happens. No one's an overnight success. I'll say I'm the furthest thing from overnight success. I mean, even in high school, a lot of my closest friends got recruited way before I did. I didn't see recruitment heavy until actually from track. That's where I actually got recruited for football from. I actually got recruited through track, but I didn't see that like everyone else. A lot of kids talk about, I'm talking to colleges as a freshman or I'm talking to colleges as this and that. And then, you're seeing kids get offers right away. And I got my first offer was from North Dakota, University of North Dakota. And I got that in the spring of my junior year. Right after running track season, the coaches came out and saw me at a track practice, and they said oh, we think extend the offer. And that really was a eye-opening thing for me. I was like, wow, I could really do this. And it was something from that point that I made the decision that if I'm going to do this though, I'm going to go all in. And I had a lot of dudes I grew up with who were getting offers. I had many offers. By the time that I got my first offer, a lot of my close friends, a lot of people I knew and that were athletes already had 10, 12 offers, all different schools, all different conferences. And I was just getting my first offer, and I was just like, wow, this is something that I could really do. And I'll say this is like, delayed gratification is probably one of the things in the world. And a lot of people forget, and a lot of people don't realize it, is that, a lot of people think of like, oh, you're either born with it or you got it or you don't. But like, oh, they want the instant gratification. Oh, I worked out for 4 hours today, so I should see results. Or I did this I worked hard. I did overtime. I did extra practice. I did extra drills. I did extra that. I should see results right away. And it's something that you got to realize that it's not something that happens like that. It never happens like that. And the people who get instant, there's a lot of people who do get that, don't get me wrong, that do get the instant gratification. They get noticed right away and they see those results. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not sustainable. And one of my coaches actually told me is the story. This is when I first got to college. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but
you're good. Keep ripping.
But when my freshman year is one of the biggest things that resonated with me. And he told me he had recruited 2 kids. One kid was a walk-on, and one kid was like a 4-star, 5-star athlete. The 4-star, 5-star athlete started for 3 years, did his thing, and ended up going to the NFL. And the walk-on was just playing this game, did his role, and did everything right, and worked hard, and worked every day till he could. And they both made it to the NFL. One had a 2-year career, and one had an 11-year career, and you could guess which one did. And it was just because the fact is he was willing to put in that work and put in the extra time, which people get caught up in a lot of the Instagram and Twitter and all that, and all that, just the hype of things. And you got to realize is, like I said, like Tom Brady, prime example. He was 6th round, 7th round pick, and now look at him. You know what I mean? And I just feel like a lot of those things that people forget about are the intangibles of making that mental decision. And it goes with your everyday decisions of deciding when you want to be or how you want to get to where you want to be. And it's about the process, and people forget about that. But
so,
I just want to go ahead.
Off of that, let me just try to rein this in a little bit, because you're doing great. You keep spewing knowledge, but off of that, the mindset of it's not going to happen overnight. I think you can relate that to literally everything in life, not just athletics, but fitness, finances, mindset with loved ones, relationships, everything with that. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take some time to work towards. And anything that happens instantly best chances are it's not sustainable, like you said. So talk to me about who instilled that mindset in you, and how you were able to continue to carry out your process. Like you said, in 7th and 8th grade, when you weren't all the hype, and you saw other people getting offers and other people getting knowledge or interest from coaches, and you were just kind of behind the scenes. Where do you find the motivation when you're not the star? Or because I think that's another bad thing that social media creates, is it's all about you, or it's all about yourself. And I'm sure Minnesota is doing a great job of instilling that it's a team thing, and that's what people need to focus on more. So how do you motivate yourself when you're not getting all the praise, and how do you keep going through those times? What drives you through those times, and who instilled that mindset in you?
For me, I had a couple of people in life who really showed me that lifestyle. One thing I'd say is a testament to my father. My father, when he came to the United States, he didn't have much. He really came here on a whim, and he worked. He works. My dad, that man, I used to wake up for high school at 6:30, 7:30, whenever I had to get up in the morning, and he'd already been in his office. And he's the owner of his own company, and he still works he's still when he was 27, back when he was 28. And he just has that mindset of he instilled that work ethic in me. And it's something that when I see him do that and I see him have his success, he always tells me this isn't made overnight. I didn't become successful overnight. And he always told me it was work. All the work came from this, every day. The bad days are always going to make the good days. And another thing is that I had a coach who really instilled in me, it was you got to make work habitual. He got to make it so that it's just, this is who you are. And when you get to that point, it's yes, you have your eyes open. You'd always tell yourself, you always remind yourself of what your end goal is, but you don't don't look at it too much. You have in your back of mind when stuff is going hard. Because there's days, don't get me wrong, there's days where I'm sitting there do I really want to go do some extra drills? Do I really want to go out and do that? But then I tell myself, like, but I know what I want in the end. So I have to go do it. It has to become more of a habit. And I think the biggest thing is creating those habits of success. Like,
Do you
one of
think
the, go ahead.
do you think that mindset can be created in anybody, or do you think it has to be instilled like into someone when they're young?
And that, I honestly have had multiple conversations with people with that. And I think it's honestly a decision that you have to make. And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'll say, like, I wasn't this way my whole life. I never, like, it took some time for me to get to this point, and I'm still working on it. I don't think I'm perfect at it. I think I have a long way to go, but I definitely see, I mean, to think back to when I was in high school, like, when everybody was getting offers, and I was like, it wasn't necessarily me saying like I was a jealous thing, but I'd say it was more like a motivational. I saw that what they were doing and how they were getting there, and I was like, I need that too for myself. So I made a decision to put myself in a position to get there. And I mean, it took guidance from people. Like, one of my coaches told me, he said, never let anybody's, like, this is another thing, never let anybody steal your joy. That was one of the quotes he told me. And never, I can't think what he said. I want to say how he said it, but he said, make sure to make like the work basically a tradition, and you want to make it a ritual. The fact of like, you really will see the results though once you put in the work though. Like, a lot of people forget that, like, all right, I may be as big as I am. I came into college 220, skinny, 6'4", skinny, not knowing what to do, clumsy kid. And I just, I mean, I just literally let the process work on me. And I just, every day, you got to like kind of attack those type of things. And it's like the fact that and I'll say this, like, I wasn't always like this, but the fact is like, once I got it instilled into me, it's something that I had to continue. And like, all the most successful people have successful habits. And that's like, I mean, that's common knowledge, is like, you got to think about it. Like, no one is successful by accident. Some people are born into it. Some people have certain situations that work in it, but no one who's truly successful and truly good at what they do it doesn't just happen. Everybody has to. Go ahead.
Let's talk a little bit about like the perspective driving performance, basically, something you were kind of saying in the beginning of that. And then like you kind of finished with culture. I would say like the culture that's around you helps you. Let's talk a little bit about what your opinion is on culture. And obviously that's a big thing in the program you're in right now. And just like, can you attest to like, what I find in life is when I'm around people that want to do good and want to push you and like want you to succeed and have the same vision and goals as you, like want to work hard. It might not be like, let's say me and you are hanging out, like I don't have goals to be a football player, but like you have a goal and I have a goal of where I want to go in life. So people like that and culture like that, like I want you to talk about like who you surround yourself with and how that helps you, because I'm sure when you're having a bad day, your 2-3 roommates probably pick you up and say, get your ass to practice. Like, we got to work hard. And I'm sure when they're having a bad day, you're doing the same thing and picking them up. So maybe if you could just talk about culture a little bit, how that's helping you now and how that's helped you in the past, and then who you're surrounding yourself with as well.
For me, I think culture is everything. I mean, with the culture we have here, it's always, go hard. Like, that's basically give your best. And like, we have a definition of success. And our definition of success is the peace of mind, knowing at the end of the day, you did everything you could to be the best you was, also changing your best every day. And like, I think about it and it's like, it's perfect. Because think about it. You don't have to, the success is different to everybody. My football ability and your football ability may be different, but if you're getting better every day and working to get better every day, and it doesn't matter how small or how great of a stride you make, as long as you're making those steps forward and having those people around you, that is the biggest thing. Is that people really, like, I'll say this is probably the best way to like siphon it down to something small. There's failing and there's failure, right? Failing is growth. So when you're pushing yourself to your absolute limit, if it's mental, if it's physical, or whatever it is, and you keep coming back to work at it, that's failing, which is growth, because you're growing, you're getting better by doing those things. And there's failure. Failure is just outright quitting. And that's what you can't do. And that's one thing we preach in culture, is that you can fail. I mean, you can fail and have failing happening to you, but as long as you get back and keep going at it, you're going to continue to grow. But the second you're a failure and you fail, like failure, that is quitting, and that's giving up. And you can't. And that's one thing that I think the culture is really instilled in me and instilled in my teammates, because I've even noticed with the guys that we've had going to the draft this season, we had 5 guys get drafted. And some of my teammates have called me and attested to me, like saying that like the culture has gotten them through training camps and things like that. And they've seen the difference, because when they got to training camp, a lot of the guys in the NFL or a lot of the rookies were in the situation weren't necessarily ready for the hardship, because, you know, every college is not the same. A lot of people think like every college is just, they all do the same thing. They do the same workouts. But at the same time, we may do the same workouts. Everyone's going to do a winter workout, a spring ball, or fall camp. But how do you do that? How do you get through those hard times when it's tough? How do you make sure you're your best self? How do you make sure you're prepared for everything you're doing? And like another thing is that we always say in the culture is how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you want to slack in one area,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
For real. Like it will show up in another area. Like when you slack in one area, it will show up in another area. So you got to make that decision. And a lot of people, and I keep saying decision because a lot of people feel as if like, oh, he had somebody supporting him, or he had somebody just sitting there to tell him to do. But at the end of the day, no one can make the decision for you to be successful, to be great, to be whatever you want to be. You have to make that decision yourself. And it can be small choices and it can be big choices, but that decision ultimately is you at the end of the day.
Have you built any daily routines or habits that help you harvest your mindset?
Yeah, I definitely have. In season, I have a thing, I call it Pass Rush Mondays. And so Mondays is supposed to be our off day. And for me, I come in on Monday and I work pass rush. And that's like something in season that I make sure I do daily. I always have my jug with me. I actually have it right here. I try to drink 2 of these a day. It's a half a gallon. So I drink 2 of these a day throughout the day, just always having it with me. Drinking a lot of water and the little things. And I what I try to do is I try to add something like once a month. You know, when I first was starting out, like building habits, and that's one thing I was really working through COVID. That's honestly, I lost, you know, COVID hit everybody hard. And I lost my ways a little bit because I was out of my routine and I had to get back into it. And, you know, one thing is like I was like, every day for the next month, I'm gonna make my bed. Every morning I wake up, make my bed. And then I just built that habit. And then once that becomes routine for me, that making my bed is a routine, I add another habit. And then once that habit becomes routine, you add another habit and just building on top of that. And like for me, my biggest thing is to just make sure you do a little extra. And I always try to do something, just something. It doesn't matter if it's reading a book, if it doesn't matter if it's getting 10 extra reps of something, just doing something just a little bit extra will go a long way. And I've realized that. I mean, that's when you see the growth of yourself. And like, I think like right now, my biggest thing is making sure I make my bed and making sure that I have my water with me. Those are the 2 biggest things that I've been working on. And just add little things like that. I feel like I said earlier, like successful people have successful habits. And so I just been working on building those habits for myself.
Do you think a lot of other people think that same way, or do you think it's hard to come across to have that kind of mindset?
I think it is hard to apply it. I feel like everyone knows a lot of that. You know what I mean? Like if I told you, if I had Bill Gates in front of you and told you this is what you got to do to be successful, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, sounds good. But do I really want to do that every day, down and out? Like it's hard. Like, and that's the thing is like they say, it takes 21 days to build a habit. And like we have a saying in the culture. This is from Coach Fleck himself, and he says, you got to create good habits, create elite instincts, right? And so you want to create these habits every day, and then once you make it like boring habits create, you know, good instincts, and you just got to keep building those. You can't just start out with nothing. You don't just start. You don't just like, it doesn't just one day you wake up like, yeah, I'm gonna be successful, and it just happens. Like, and I feel like I keep preaching that, but it's the biggest thing that I've realized. And like even in college, I got to college and I was redshirted right away. You know what I mean? You have the biggest hopes because as a recruit, they tell you, oh, you're going to come here, you're going to play and do all that. And I got redshirted and I was like, dang, like, all right, I'm redshirted. So I had to attack that process and I had to keep working at that. Then we went into spring ball and we went to our next season. I didn't play for the first half of my redshirt freshman year. And then I got a small role in the second half of my redshirt freshman year. And I got my first start in our bowl game that year. And like, that was really just like the process of that whole year of really learning the game and really just like taking the little things and taking the little victories and just working at those really showed, because it's like I can't sit here and get mad because I'm not where I want to be, but I'd be damned if I let that dictate my position. So
That's
I mean,
that's the mindset right there that people just don't have. Like a lot of people right there, like you come in, you get redshirted, you were expecting to maybe play, like everybody is, like that's just the way it goes. And like some people, they're just gonna start complaining. They're gonna start not working out as hard. They're gonna start having attitude in practice. They're gonna start not embellishing like what they're supposed to be doing there. Like you're still in the program. They still see promise in you. Like there's a reason you're there. You got to go through the process. Where I feel like the people that I don't like to surround myself with, and I've been doing a good job of not surrounding myself with those people, are the people that you tell them that, and then they're just complaining. They just complain, like that's going to help anything or help anybody. It's not. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help your team. So why don't you just put your head down, trust the process, keep working hard, because that's going to help yourself get better. Even if you don't play at the end, still going to get better, still going to build good habits for life. And it's also going to help your team prepare for whatever they need to go through. If you're just on practice squad and you're just playing, you got to put up your best, like your best against your starting, right guard or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's going to help that. Iron sharpens iron. So when you're being a dumbass and just complaining about stuff and having that negative mindset, you're not helping anybody in the program or yourself. And I just think like that's a really good example of like the way you think, and the way that successful people think is you just trusted the process, put your head down and worked harder instead of complaining about stuff. And I feel like in everyday life, people do that on a smaller scale. One bad thing goes wrong at 8 a.m. They spill their coffee. They're pissed and complaining about everything for the rest of the day. When it's like, you can't have that victim mentality of like, oh, why me? Or why didn't I get picked? Or why didn't my number get called? Or, why didn't I catch that break? Instead, just keep working hard and you will catch a break eventually. Like being negative about everything isn't going to help anybody, especially when you're in a situation. Like you just got to see the light at the end of the tunnel and just keep pushing through. But I just had to expand on that, because that right there told me enough I needed to know, like, about the way your mind thinks and why you're successful.
100%. I think that's something that a lot of people forget about, though, because you got to think about it. When you have that negative energy, and it's not even just you, you can still be a hopeful person, but if you let people in your talk in your ear about negative energy, that can have an effect on you too. Because I've seen it, I've heard it, I've seen it. You know what I mean? Like coming in this freshman, not everyone was happy that they were redshirted, and like when you take that and you really let that dwell, and you think like, woe is me, and not I'm gonna make the situation happen. And like another person who was really big in my life was one of my high school coaches. And he told me, it was like, when you get there, just know you're going to have to work, and don't ever have that woe is me attitude, because that won't get you anywhere. And he told me like never let that. And that's why I say never let no one steal your joy. It's because if you let a situation like that happen, like your coffee spilling, if you let that ruin your day, you're letting the coffee control your joy. You're letting another person, another thing control your happiness and basically your life. So you can never let something else or someone else control your happiness, and never let someone steal your joy, no matter what you're doing. And like to the process part of you're talking, it's like a lot of people feel as if there's a plan. If I told you, what I mean, how hard would you work if I told you 6 months here and then you'll get your promotion, 5 months here, then you'll get to this job? You may be like, all right, perfect. I have 5 months to go hard, and you have like the end in sight. And a lot of people think that there's always a date that you'll realize, or a time that it should happen. And it never really works out like that, because if life was a plan, if there was a straight arrow of everyone's like, this is how you be successful, you do this, that, and that, and you're successful, and you're rich, and you're famous, and you're whatever you want to be, everyone would do it. It may be hard, but everyone would be like, oh, I know I only got 3 more months of this, and I'd get there. But like for me, I thought I'd redshirt, I'd learn the game, and I'd get to play more. Then first game came, I didn't see a lick of playing time. So I was like, all right, something I'm doing is not right, and I have to obviously change something in my thing. And like that's what I think of, like the insanity part, is that some people also think that if I just do this day in and day out, that it would change. But at the same time, it's like I had to realize after the first game where I didn't get a lick of play, that I was like, all right, something in my process or what I'm doing is not good enough, or I'm not to the standard I need to be. So for me to sit here and do the same thing every day, would be insanity. To expect different results doing the same thing every day, that's just straight insanity. So to like get to that point of like what you're talking about of making sure, like, another thing is you never know your timeline. Like, you never know when that's gonna come. Your opportunity could come today or tomorrow.
It's kind of like the David Goggins mindset of like where he's like, don't set like you were saying, like you can't set like that, like expect to be successful in 3 months. Like, hey, my goal is to make $100,000 this year. So when that comes around, like, and you don't make $100,000, you're sad. But like the Goggins mindset, I was just listening to something this morning, is like he talks about like once you can get your mind over, like, let's say you wanted to run 25 miles. And if you say you're going to run 25 miles, your mind thinks like that 25 miles is going to be hard. But once you stop setting limits like there, that 25 miles, your body can do it. Like, you just need to get your mind out of the way. So that's like, I feel like it kind of relates to you saying like the 3 months, like I'm going to be successful. Like I only have 3, like once I'm there, I'm there. Like it doesn't work like that. Like you need to push past those things because it's not always going to happen on a timeline, and you just got to keep working at it.
100%. I definitely agree with that 100%. And it's like, because like I was definitely not an overnight success, even in high school, even in college. It took me. I'm about to be on my 5th season here at Minnesota, and if I told you this is the same path that I thought I would have in high school, I'd be lying to you. You know what I mean? I didn't think this was how college would go for me, but it showed me a lot more about myself and where I need to be, and it's given me the reassurance of that. Through whatever I have to do, we have to find a way, and that's the biggest thing. Is that the biggest battle is mental. I'd say people forget is like they think like you just have to have I can wake up at 5 a.m. and just go, but like the majority of your battle is mental. It's okay if you wake up at 5 a.m. to get to work, right? But how do you attack that work? Do you sit there and really put your all mentally, physically into what you're doing? Like, it's one thing for me to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I work out for 3 hours a day. That's okay. That's cool. Whatever that happens. But how much time do I spend on mental? Like, how much time do I spend making sure I'm mentally sharp, mentally ready, mentally prepared? And because I got to be mentally tough before I'm physically tough.
That's something you can talk about a little bit.
Mentally tough?
Yeah, like what you're doing to work through that. That's something you can talk about a little bit.
Yeah, before that, I wanted to ask, you kept bringing up like your coaches and the lessons that they like have taught you. And I'm curious, do you think like putting kids in sports helps create that mindset young? Like without sports, do you think that you would have the same mindset that you have, or?
I think sports has definitely been a big factor of it. I don't think I'd have the same mindset, honestly. I learned a lot through, various coaches I've had. I've had a lot of coaches that I still talk to, even coaches that were coaching when I was very little, because I think sports brings something above you. And I think it teaches you toughness, not necessarily physically, but just like toughness, like at a young age. And when I say sports, I don't mean just being a straight athlete. I think any type of sports where you have to dictate and have to put in your effort beyond just like what you want, like that, I feel like that is definitely, because a coach is like another part of a person's mentor. They're another, I'd say, like, I wouldn't say you're another parent, but they are another person who has a big influences on a child's life. A coach that you've had for a while will have a very big impact. It can be good or bad, but coaches definitely, I would say, and you got to pick and choose, because not all coaches are great and not all coaches are bad though. So yeah, I definitely say they are a big factor for me. And I'm a person that's like, I like, relationships. I like genuine, and I like people who really have that like passion and who really truly care about who they're coaching, who they're playing, who the players are. And when you have that type of connection with your coach, they'll help you. Because at the end of the day, what is a coach? A coach is somebody who either had a dream or who sees a dream in you and wants you to fulfill it. And like, that's one thing I've also learned. My coaches one of my DC was talking to me, and he was telling me, the coach or a person who's older, a mentor, it doesn't even have to be a mentor. Somebody that you look up to is a person who's in the helicopter. You're on the street as a person looking down the road and seeing your path. I'm walking down the street and I see the end of the road, while they're in the helicopter and they can see way further than you can. And sometimes you think like, I need to stay on this path, or I need to take a right, or I need to take a left. But they're on the helicopter and they're like, no, just keep going on this path. I see the end of the road for you. Just keep going. And that's something that really helps me because they keep me on track of like, when I may get off track or I may get in the wrong direction, they can be like, no, you just need to keep on this path. This is where you need to stay. This is where you need to focus. This is where you need to keep everything going. And it's like, I feel that's really helpful for me because I think like seeing that, oh yeah, this is where I need to keep going. They're telling me like, sometimes I don't see it. I don't see it in myself at times. And they remind me like, no, you're right. Just keep going in this path. Just keep going this direction. This is the direction you need to head. And you will get there eventually because they are there. They've seen it. They can see further down the road. They've been in this situation. They've seen it countless times. And so like, even if it's business, even if it's somebody who's showing you, running a business, and they're showing you how to start your own, like they've been there before and they can see in a helicopter and see further down the road than I can.
Yeah. Very true.
I
also
you go.
I also think nature versus nurture comes into play here, just because the way that you're raised has a big part with like who you are later in life. And then obviously what you learn along the way can be different from how you're raised.
100%.
I think like off of that, like it all comes back to like who you're surrounding yourself with. Like you don't really have a choice like who your family is when you're young. So if they're not instilling like the work ethic values that you were getting, like you said your dad was in the office working, like you were seeing that firsthand, like that's how I'm gonna make it in this life. Then you could be put in a situation where like your family, like all they do is complain or they don't work hard for things, and like that's gonna set you back. But like as long as you surround yourself, once you get into like that high school range, like especially into college, like you can pick who you're around. Like it's the same thing about coaching. Like you were saying, there's good coaches, there's bad coaches, and the coaches that are going to be there to encourage you when you have a bad game, a bad practice, instead of just ripping you apart and not like building you back up. Like it's the same type of like mentality of like, that's going to push you to become a better player and a better person. And they got to figure out like what you respond well to. But when you're a kid and you're taking in all that, negativity or like whatever, it's going to take you some time to work out of that mindset. So like, I think like when we were talking about like, are you born with it or can you teach it? You can teach it for sure, but you need to make that conscious effort and decision to cut down on time or, whatever with the people that aren't bringing you up. Like I can see it in my own life, like people I used to hang out with, like I'm a completely different person now than when I surround myself with like 3 solid people that want you to do good and want to help out. So I think like that all comes around to like, it's all about who you surround yourself with. And that's the same thing with a coach. Like they can be so good for you if they're positive, influence on you and they're checking up on you and, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Where if you have a bad coach and they don't do any of that, like that can definitely affect you as a player and as a person in life.
And 100%. I think it can be hard to, like when we're talking about family, it can be hard to just like cut your family off just because they're negative people, but at least like limiting your time with those people or even trying to help them, like point it out when they're being negative or not having that good mindset and try to help them have a better mindset.
100%. I think the biggest thing is like, I've even noticed it in my own life is that like, sometimes like I have a lot of friends I've had in my life. And sometimes you draw away, like when you are on a path of getting to where you want to be, sometimes the people you need will stay and sometimes the people you don't need will leave. And one of the things that's hard is that you got to pick and choose those relationships. And, sometimes you have that childhood friend who's always been there and you've always, I want to keep them around because we've had such a close bond. We've always been close friends, but sometimes it's not the best for you. And that's one thing, like, you wake up and you realize, you understand. And as we get older, we're seeing things for how they really are. Sometimes as a kid, you don't see that. You start to, as you grow up, you realize like what you thought was this may not actually truthfully be what it was in your mind. And as you wake up, or not even just wake up, but you realize, and you have to make that conscious decision, and you can either let people bring you down or bring you up. And, it's at the end of the day, like back to what we were talking about, it's the choices you make and making those daily decisions. And it's not to sit here and say like, you need to cut off all your friends and just do that. It's to sit here and say like, if you want to be where you want to be, you have to sit down with yourself. I think the biggest thing I did with myself in COVID that really, really, put me on a great path was I had to sit down with myself and really decide what I wanted for my life. You know, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? And I had to make that conscious decision of like, okay, what am I doing right now to get on my past, and what do I need to be doing? And
I think
go
a
ahead.
lot of people just like don't look forward at all. Like, and that's a tough thing to do, because then like life is a little bit empty and you won't get anywhere, because you can't get anywhere without like any bit of goals or planning, or, you know, like you were saying, like I had to figure out like what I wanted to do so I can take that path to do it. Like at least put myself on a trajectory to get there. So I feel like people our age struggle with like finding a path, and without a path life becomes tough, because you feel like you're just like you're empty, you know what I mean? Like you don't know what you're trying to work towards. So I think like that's a good thing to talk about, is like goals and planning. Like how are you doing that? Like, are you setting goals every year? Like what are your goals like
For
you
me,
looking at those every day, or what type of process do you have for that? You know what I mean? Because that's something that like even me and her just did, and that obviously helps you like see the track or stay the track.
For me, I think of it, I do have goals. I do set goals for myself yearly, and like things I want to do. And it's not even just like a lot of people think it might be, oh, it's just work oriented, or it's just future oriented, or just towards the test. It's not like that. Like, so I have silly goals. I have goals of like, I want to try 3 new restaurants. You know what I mean? I want to try something, just like stuff to have like, this year, this is what I want to plan. This is what I want to do. And like things like that to keep my like mind fresh, or not even just mind fresh, but just to be able to add something to your repertoire. And like one thing for my biggest thing this year was like I added 2 books to my list, and I've added meditation, which I really will test. Meditation is really good. I love it. Now I'm starting to fall in love with it. And I'm just like things like that. You just like add them to your list. And like I'm still bad at it. Like it's a habit I wanted to instill. And I was supposed to meditate this morning and I missed it. But I'm not gonna sit here and say like, well, that means I'm not gonna be successful, because it's still a habit that I'm instilling. It's still something that I gotta work at to get to where I want to be. So for me, my goals are like they're the end of the tunnel. I'd say this is like, there's the microscope and there's a telescope, right? So I consider the telescope as my future, or my goals, or my end goal, right? And you look in the telescope and you can see so far, and you're seeing all the way down, you're just looking far. And then there's the microscope, which is your day-to-day habits. And the microscope is what I look at to make sure that I'm on track. Like, oh, I'm looking at my microscope, just focusing on this little thing right here, this small thing that I need to focus on today. I know my big end goal. I know where I want to be, and that's where my goals are, and that's my list of things that I have written down for myself. But you got to make a decision to focus in on that one thing, and that mindset of just basically like, you can write. People may have different ways of doing it. You can have your goals in your phone and your notes. You can have your goals written on your wall, or you can just repeat them to yourself in the morning, just to make sure that you're making decisions towards that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really good one. We should talk about a day in the life of you as a student athlete. Like what is that like? Because Summer actually just right before this sent me a message she had received about basically mindset of like, I can't do that, right? Like I'm too busy, or I can't fit that in my day, or
Yeah.
I'm working an 8-hour job, like that's just too much. Like you need to talk about your day in the life, because like you post stories at 5:30 a.m. when it's -30 out and you're walking to your workout. Like people need to stop thinking like I can't. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's the I can't.
I can't
You just keep
mentality.
going. Yeah.
So for me, I think that the I can't is the thing that is detrimental to a lot of people. I mean, I think I do it myself sometimes. I catch myself in that situation where it's like my family would call me, be like, oh, you should come home this weekend. I'd be like, oh, I can't. I got to do this and that for football. But at the same time, like, can I really find a way to fit that in? And I could. And it's like I had that bad habit of like, telling people, oh, I can't this weekend, or I can't see you because I got to do that. And for me, the day in the life, I mean, let me go through like a season. For the season, I wake up, if it's a workout, if it's a morning of a workout, I'd wake up probably about 6. We're in the office. I mean, we're in the building from about 6 to I'll say 6 to about 12. That's about it. About the time I spent there, that's when we have to practice. Then I got to go do my recovery after practice. got to hit the ice bath, got to roll out, got to get my tape off. And then I probably will leave after practice and everything. I'll probably leave around 1. That's when I leave, and I get my lunch, eat my lunch. Then you got to do your schoolwork. Obviously, you got to do that. You got to knock that out. It's probably like an hour or so, and then I got to head back over there because I got to do my night session of film from practice that day, of going over the game plan, of going over what needs to get ready for the next day. So we're back in there for another hour or two. Doesn't matter, depending on what I'm doing, because depending on the day of the week. And so once you're going through that, like that's what, now it's about 6:00, go get dinner, come back home. And I really I try to limit myself of like not being too overly focused. And I give myself maybe like an hour and a half just to like digress. You know what I mean? And that's when I sit in the living room with my roommates and we're just talking. And like, that's one thing we really try to, like, we do a lot now, is that we'll just sit in the living room and just talk. And we're not sitting, just sitting on our phones or watching TV or doing something mindlessly, but just really having like honest conversations with each other. And we can talk about the most random things, or the most like, we can even talk about our days. If we had a bad day, we'll talk about our day. And just having that like consistent communication is really helpful. But for me, the day, I'd say I spend majority of my day, if I'm waking up at 6, I'd say I probably spend about close to about 10 hours on football. And then another 14, or not a 14, but another 4 on school. If it's a heavier day, if it's a lighter day, maybe 2. But if it's a heavier day, I could be spending about 4. And then the rest, I give myself an hour to digress. And then the rest, I'm getting ready for bed, And it's like making those decisions of having those habits of really waking up, because it's not easy. I mean, the biggest battle for me in the day is just to get out of bed sometimes. But once you do, Absolutely. You got to make that decision to get it going.
So, I mean, you're all in at like a 14-hour workday, basically, when you're done with that already, like without the extra that you're for sure putting in, and most of the people are putting in. So you're all in at almost like a 16-hour workday when it's all said and done with school and football and working out and eating. So like, that's just something I wanted to like bring up, like, and you're still having a positive mindset about that, where like some people are working like not even 8-hour days and they're already, I'm too tired, I can't get up an extra 2 hours early. Like, people just need to see that it's like possible if you have that mindset. And obviously that's something like people need to work towards, and it doesn't just happen overnight, like we were talking about in the beginning, but it's definitely possible, right? Like, you can always
100%.
do more.
100%. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I think that people forget, is that you can, like, instead of saying you can't, you can. It's just more of making that decision. Like I said, I don't know why it always comes back to it, but those decisions, I'm telling you, they're really everything. They're really the root of everything. The root of success, the root of making those decisions to either I can do this today, or I can fit in that, or I got to make the time for that. And when you make those conscious decisions of like, I need to focus on this, or I need to put that to the side. And I think like if it is hard for you to wake up and it's hard for you to get up and like, oh, I just had a 8-hour work day, I just want to lay down, and like, yeah, I get it. You want to take a quick break, but don't sit there. This is my biggest thing, is that I say is that if you're going to sit there for 5 hours after work and go watch TV, you can't get mad that you don't have time today. You can't say you don't have time today. You can't say that, oh, I couldn't do that because you made the conscious decision of, oh, I just want to go watch TV for 5 hours. Now I missed this, or now I don't have a chance to do that. And it's like, if you make that decision, I'll never sit here and say like it's bad, or don't watch TV, or I don't, like, I have days where I watch TV and I have days, but I'm never going to sit there and say that, it's my fault, that it's not my fault, or that I don't have enough time, because I made that decision to do that day. Like, yeah. I'll never complain and say like, oh, I complain, but I'll never sit there and make an excuse because like, oh, I don't have time today to do anything. Well, what did I do today? Did I spend an hour watching TV? How many episodes did I watch? What was I doing for that hour when I was just laying in my bed? Stuff like that. And like, I can't sit there and be mad at myself at the end of the day and say like, well, I didn't have enough time because I made those conscious decisions. But if I make those decisions, I got to live with it.
And how do you channel that like energy and motivation? Do you listen to music, podcasts, read books, etc.?
For us, we have in our meetings that we have with our coaches, we have a quote every day. And it honestly, I think it's the best thing. You know, some people read them, some people don't. But for me, I think the quotes every day that we get are honestly like the greatest, like, because it gives you perspective on different advices, different people from John Wooden to Gandhi to, you know, to freaking, you know, Abraham Lincoln. Like any people who are leaders or people who are inspiration will honestly, like, you put a quote in front of us every day, and seeing those quotes is very helpful for me. And honestly, it's also back to your why. And I never really talked
Mm-hmm.
about the podcast, but having your why in the back of your mind constantly is the easiest way to get through a situation. You know, why do you want to be successful? Like you may have a goal of like, I've always wanted to own a business. All right. So you're working, you know, working and doing what you're doing right now to get to that stage, having that why of, dang, why am I waking up at 5 a.m.? Well, that's why. You know what I mean? Keep remembering and keep reminding yourself about what your why is, and that will
Mm-hmm.
get you through a lot of those hard situations.
Very true.
Let's say you have a, you know, shitty game, shitty practice, your mindset's not right, especially like the practice, because I mean that's the toughest part. Games are easy. But let's say you're having a tough day, man, and your practice just isn't going right. Like you're getting yelled at, you're just not on track, your mind's not there, you're a little cloudy. Like what are you doing to rein that in, or, you know, to bounce back from that? Like I'm sure your culture's there, so people are picking you up, like that's a good thing to have. But what if like you don't have that culture around you in the day-to-day life? Let's say you got, you know, not great friends, or they don't have the same mindset as you, and you're trying to better yourself and you have a crappy day, same thing as a crappy practice. Like what are you doing yourself to pick yourself up through that and stay the course?
I think for me, I mean, I'm blessed to have the people I do, like my roommates, and have the teammates I have, because they do pick me up. I do have those bad days, and I do have those things happen to me, happen to everybody. But I'd say the biggest thing is to remind yourself of like, when not everything is going right, don't try to fix everything at once, and don't try to sit there like, if I'm having a bad practice and I'm getting cussed out because of this, that, or whatever happening, I'll make sure that I'm focused on one thing to get better, and one thing to make sure, and focusing on those little things. Like that's back to the microscope of like, I may have gotten mad, they may be mad about all this and that, but let me make sure I get this right today. Let me fix this one thing today to make sure that I at least get something more productive out of the day. Because if I just dwindle and I stay in that dwell, it's not going to be beneficial for me or for anybody.
So brick by brick.
Yep. Just one thing at a time.
Do you think social media plays a role in either like the good side or bad side of mental toughness?
I honestly think yeah, I'd say for me personally, I think it has, it can be good and bad. I think social media can give like that's back to my thing about instant gratification. Social media gives you instant gratification regardless. You get that notification, and if you see the likes or you see that, and people get the instant gratification right then and there, and it can be like, okay, that can be good. It can lift you up in that moment, but after that, like, what are you gonna say? Like that's not gonna be there forever. And
Mm-hmm.
it also can be dwindling because you see people doing something, you know what I mean? Like you see someone on vacation, or you see someone living, you know, a extravagant life or whatnot, and that can be really like, you know, sad to a person. Like, oh, why am I not traveling the world? Why am I not being able to do all that? Like, what am I missing? And that can play a role. And I think that people got to realize that you can't focus on that. And everyone's life is different. Like I said, like in the beginning, the two people who had two different paths, walk on versus the 4-star athlete. If they were to sit there and, you know, compare apples to apples, they would never have gone through what they were doing. You know what I mean? Like you can't compare apples to apples. Like you just gotta let what you have. And I try to stay away from social media. I don't post a lot. I don't really, you know, I'm not on social media a lot. I try to stay away from it, but I do go on it and I do use it. But I think as one thing I do catch myself sometimes, I you know, you going down a rabbit hole, and it's just like sometimes you just got to pull yourself out of that and not really look at that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, and how do you get there?
um, 5 years. I think company Explorer be popping up and running by the 5 years. uh, but 5 years, honestly, I hope to be playing football still. I hope to be, on to the next level. It's definitely something that I'm working towards, and it's definitely something that I've had, I've had to really digress and really make a decision of like break it down of like what do I need to do every day for it. And I hope 5 years, I want to be on a successful path of business, and working into getting to that stage of life and or playing ball still. And I think the biggest thing for myself of like getting myself or how do I get there is making the small steps now. Because I mean, when it does happen, when I'm done with football, that will be a day, it never lasts forever. I want to be able to be prepared for the second stage. And if that's making the decision of, having a conversation with people, asking people questions. And that's one of the things I think is really helpful for me. I always make sure that I talk to people who are in positions that I want to be. If I want to work in real estate, I talk to people. I ask those questions because I have them at my disposal, and I have people I can call and ask about that. I'm going to sit there and have those conversations because that's something I'm interested in. And, I talk to a lot of my teammates in the NFL now. What things do they wish they would have done back in college, and finding things that they said, oh, you should do this and make sure you do that, and actually applying those things to my life. Because it's one thing to ask and it's one thing to hear, and to know that, like if I told you, like, if you want to be successful, you got to call 100 people a day, but oh, shoot, that's all I got to do. And then will you really sit there and apply that to your life? Will you sit there and really go through those things? And one thing I think for me to stay the course of getting to where I want to be in 5 years is making sure I'm doing the little things and focusing on my microscope.
Do you believe in manifestation?
Yeah, I really do. I think if you tell yourself something and, if you keep that mindset, because it's just like, it's back to like, if you surround yourself, with the idea of I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be there, I'm going to get to that point, you'll make it happen. You can, but at the same time, there is a difference between wishing and applying, because if I sit here, if I sit here and tell you like, oh, I want to be able to jump 50 feet in the air, like, okay, yeah, I wish that it would happen, but what am I doing to get to that point? And like manifestation, I definitely think is a big thing, because if you repeat, waking up in the morning and tell yourself in the mirror, like, I want to be great, or I want to do this, or that, I feel like that really does help, because you start making unconscious and conscious decisions that will lead you towards that path. And if you keep that in the back of your mind, you keep refreshing that back to your focus, you don't get distracted, you don't get, swayed from where you wanted to go in your end goal.
I don't think people understand how powerful the human brain is when it comes to stuff like that.
100%. You can make that's. I think the mental part of it is that's like I said before. That's the majority of the battle. The majority of the battle is your mental toughness, your mental focus.
Anybody got anything else? I think we can wrap it up on that, unless anybody else got anything.
I have one more question. Has any one moment, person, or thing changed the course of your life?
I'd say there's multiple people. I definitely say there's multiple people. I had a high school coach. That was my track coach. He really changed my life, and he really gave me a lot of eye-opening things about just like being not focusing on like just being like great, but just being like a great person. You know what I mean? I noticed like with him, he always talked about just like finding the joy within what you're doing, and he truthfully loved coaching. He just like, I could just tell him the way he did everything. When I got to college, my DC now, he was, he worked his way up, and he got to position coach, and he worked up to become my D coordinator. And from the first day he got here, he worked with the mentality of work to where you want to be and not work where you're at. And that's one thing that I don't know why, but it was just like, that is the truest thing. Like, if I'm working at if I'm working the front desk of an office, but I want to be a manager, if I'm working as just a tech guy, and I want to become CFO, worked as if you're in the position that you want to be and not where you're just at. And that's one thing that really, like, it's like a forward thinking progress of like putting in that extra work, and those things like that mentioned to me, this like really made really just like changed my life a lot.
We can wrap it
Heck
on that.
yeah.
I mean, that's a great mindset. Live life above the bar. Don't just do the little bit and scrape by.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.